Minions! It is I, Critical Kunik, back with yet another RPG horror story, and quite the tale we have today about the birthplace of a possible murder hobo, and a player's cry for help for possible fixes to the situation. I won't spoil any more, so without further ado, let's roll for initiative and begin the story. Possible birth of a murder hobo. This is something that's going on I need a little advice with, as we're all new players and this is our DM's first campaign. The cast will mostly consist of Samuel, a catfolk fighter, Snowpea, my halfling rogue, and Red, a dragonborn sorcerer. I began to notice problems with Red right away. One small thing. He divulged most of his character's backstory in Session 0, after my character asked him where he was from. I know that this was most of his backstory because after the session, the DM kept us behind and kind of told us some problems she had with our characters. She told me that while she liked my character's personality, she warned me that she couldn't really fit any plot hooks for her in the campaign, because her backstory had an ending. There was no motive or anything she could really work in. So if I wanted plot hooks or character growth for her, I might want to reconsider changing her backstory or adding something to it. I took her advice and I am so much happier with the character I have now, and she told Red that he might want to consider dialing back what he tells us because he's giving away all of the plot hooks he told her he wanted to set out, because now, at this point, it won't be shocking or exciting when the party reaches them, and she doesn't want his backstory to lose momentum before it even gets started. You see, Red's character, full named as Emperor Red Dragon, comes from a high class, wealthy family, and his character is always looking for ways to make profit, or flaunts money around to get his way. He also seemed to be a flirt in Session 0, but nothing too out there. DM started us newbies off on a small side quest to give us feel for combat, and we quickly learned of how if Red feels like he's losing a fight, he will light the nearest thing on fire. It doesn't matter if your character is getting hit or not by his attack. He was even warned by our DM that Samuel and an NPC was in range, and he chose to do this anyways. His attack killed 2 of the enemies, but also knocked down Samuel, who started having to make saving throws. Once he got back up, he let his character know that he didn't care for Red's rash behavior, and one of the NPCs helping us knocked Red unconscious after seeing him basically attack Samuel and herself. One of the other party members didn't pick up Red right away, prioritizing the bears, and he took this personally, stating that they were purposefully leaving his character down and left, telling the DM to kill off his character. The DM did not do this. She instead had Red act the same way his real-life counterpart had, and had him storm off angrily as he left underappreciated, just in case he cooled down and wanted to return. Fast forward a few sessions, and we've already found ourselves in a town where the days keep resetting. Samuel and I struggled a bit to solve the problem, and the DM, at the end of the session, reminded us to look at our notes. Samuel hadn't taken any notes, but I had since the DM told us how important this would be. I was lucky to find some information in my notes from Session 0 that had an important detail about spotting a hooded figure outside of character. Our characters didn't actually see them for themselves. Samuel and I talked outside of D&D to make theories of what was going on, and I mentioned what I found in my notes. This helped a lot, and we were able to work around this without metagaming because Samuel had previously told Snowpea that he was suspicious they were being trailed. The next session, Red had returned, and was surprised we had been in the same town for 2 sessions. When our characters meet up with him, we explain how the town resets every day, and how if we try to leave, it resets. And the mysterious hooded figure Samuel had managed to spot again one of the days that we had been there, and how our characters are slowly losing their memories. Red states that he knows how to solve this by killing everyone in the town. If we kill everyone in the town, we will eventually find the person responsible, right? First off, not only would my character never do that, I didn't want to do that to the DM. The DM had been telling me how excited she is and how much detail she put into this mini-campaign, and you can see it. All of our characters are unique with different personalities and they feel alive. I didn't want her story plot for this mystery to be ruined because we burned down the town. Snowpea tries to reason with Red, but he argues that if it doesn't reset, we'll be fine. If it does, no harm done. Samuel once again reminds him that we've been here for so many days, we are losing our memories. Red appears to understand, and tells our characters if we see the hooded figure to let him know. He had a plan that he refused to tell us. We tried to pry, but Red tells us to trust him. Samuel argues that he has no reason to trust him, but Snow Pea decides to give Red the benefit of the doubt. Mostly because he's been gone for long, and I wanted to give his character a chance to kind of stand out and prove himself an asset to the group. Later, Snow Pea spots the hooded figure and alerts him. Red casts a sleeping spell. This would have been a great idea, except the hooded figure is apparently immune. DM explained that some races are immune to the spell he used, as well as illusions and the undead. Because he rolled so high on the spell, it instead infects the nearest person to Red, which is Snow Pea. Just to add some comedy, I described how Snow Pea bops her head on the table as she falls, hitting my desk for dramatic effect, and falls to the floor snoring loudly. Red attempts to pick Snow Pea up and intentionally continues an ongoing joke with Snow Pea. It seems like every time someone tries to pick her up, they fail the strength check, and Snow Pea, despite being a halfling with -1 in strength, gets a high roll, sometimes natural 20s. So the party often describes her as small but mighty. Samuel states that he wants to try and pick her up, since Red failed. But Red interrupts him and describes laying down on the floor to cuddle with my unconscious character. I'm silent as this happens, and the DM, picking up on how unsettling this scene is, describes how some NPCs at the bar find this behavior concerning, and one of them calls out to Red, asking what he's doing. Red says he's keeping Snow Pea warm, and the NPC begins telling him to just pick her up if she's cold to get her off the floor. He threatens this NPC, this halfling, pregnant NPC, whose strong, burly orc husband is sitting next to her. The husband stands up, threatening Red to leave the bar and get off Snow Pea. Red decides to engage in threats, and when that doesn't work, attacks the NPC. Several rolls ensue, and when it looks like Red is about to be knocked unconscious, he uses a spell to light the bar's wall on fire. To make this a bit shorter, our characters ended up dying in that bar, being burned to death. Red remarks that he's surprised that the orc's husband wasn't intimidated by him and actually chose to fight his character. Samuel gives a deadpan, "You threatened his pregnant wife. What did you think he was going to do?" Lucky for us, whatever hooded figure is doing, he's not yet done having fun with us. And the day resets. Only now, Samuel doesn't remember Snow Pea. Me and him were both sad about this, out of character, and Snow Pea was upset in character. We had been working on a great friendship and comical dynamic the past few sessions. I don't even get to finish Snow Pea's dialogue of her doing her best attempts to jog Samuel's memory when Red cuts in, telling Samuel that it isn't important and all he needs to know if the Munchkin is his. Snow Pea ignores it because I don't know how to react to something like that and don't want to be that player that throws a fit about small things. So I have my character state that they need a plan, that they need to split up and try to figure this out, or see if there's anything in town that can give us information, and it seems like we have a solid plan. Samuel is going to go to the bar where the hooded figure is often spotted, to see if he can see her, while also talking with the patrons to see if any of the stories they've given us have changed, or use old information to coax new information we don't have yet. Red is going to go to the house of a woman we suspect is aware the day is resetting, to look around her home to find clues. And Snow Pea is going to go after a man that whenever they get close to answers from him, the day resets again, hoping to use information from the previous days to finally get the answers she needed. Everything is going good until Red breaks into the woman's home. The DM describes their bedroom, since he broke in through the bedroom window, stating that their furniture is humble and minimal, that they only have a bed large enough to fit her and her husband, a wooded dresser, and a chest pushed up against the edge of the bed that is padlocked, and then describes a room across from the bedroom he's in that he notices splatters of paint on the floor. Now, most players would probably gravitate towards either the locked chest or the other room. Not Red. Red decides to rummage through the dresser, specifically asking the DM if there's any panties inside. The DM, a little taken aback, describes there being clothing like underwear and corsets, Cue Red stuffing all of those into his bag, before breaking into the locked chest and stealing the woman's jewelry before leaving. When the characters reconvened at the inn, Snow Pea questions Red and finds out what he's stolen. Ignoring the panty part, I question him about the jewelry, pointing out that the day is just going to reset, so stealing that doesn't matter, that he was supposed to look for any clues. Red says that now he has this jewelry, he can use it to bridge the townspeople and get information from them, since money and jewels talk. There's a problem with that I didn't bother pointing out. This is a small town, very small, and everyone knows everyone. If he tries to sell jewelry to someone who probably wouldn't have any use for it anyways, seeing as there's nowhere nearby to sell it, anyone who knows this woman is going to recognize it because she's a well-known performer in the town. After the session, once the day resets again, Samuel and I were both able to get valuable information that we can use for the next session, and start going over theories we have as well as how we are going to set up our plans. Red states that he plans to go back and rob the house again. I comment telling him that the day will reset again if we don't solve this. He says that eventually we'll figure it out, and it won't reset once we figure out who's doing this. I tell him that Snow Pea has reason now to believe it is in fact the hooded figure without a doubt is doing this. But he tells me that the hooded figure isn't his biggest concern, before once again throwing out the option to murder everyone in the town. If everyone is dead, then surely we'll kill the hooded figure and we'll be free. He then proceeds to make several comments about how it was a good thing he joined back since we seemed to need his help, and that now we finally have the plot moving forward. The plot is only moving forward because Samuel checking to see if we were being followed. That's what gave us the lead we needed. This all happened yesterday, and I've always heard if you have a problem, confront the DM about it. So, today I explained to her that I had some problems with Red. I told her that I didn't want to manage the way he played or try to limit his creativity, but his choices were directly affecting our characters. For goodness sakes, he literally got us killed, and I didn't appreciate the advances he made on Snow Pea while she was unconscious. And, because of that, it's canon that Snow Pea is officially lesbian to kind of get Red to back off, without saying anything because, again, I don't want to be that player. DM only allowed me to do this change because while I had mentioned in Snow Pea's backstory she had a dead lover, I never specifically said a name or gender. DM understood, and told me she wasn't happy about the burning the bar situation either, as it forced her to basically semi-abuse her power as a DM and asked me what problems I especially had with his character. I told her, plainly, that he's a murder hobo. He's not considering repercussions for his actions, and even when we try to warn him of the costs of his choices, he does them anyways, and a lot of the time these choices are purely made when his character isn't getting his way or winning. If he didn't know that his choices resulted in our character suffering, I'd be a bit more patient. But we've told him over and over again. We've explained how if he makes a mistake, the day could reset because this hooded figure is tricky, and appears to actually be very protective of the townsfolk here. That I've tried gently to hint to him I'm uncomfortable with certain things, without metagaming or dictating how he plays. DM assured me that she understands my frustration, and told me that Red is eventually one of those players you have to kick. I told her I didn't want that to end up happening. Outside of D&D, Red is a great guy, and he's fun to play games with. But it's like, when he started playing D&D, he starts getting into his roles too much. She told me that the relationship part will happen. Some players will try to force it, and I shouldn't change my character's sexuality if that's not what I wanted for her, and that sometimes I need to remind myself to separate myself from my character. I told her that the relationship part doesn't bother me. Even though I don't intend for Snow Pea to have one, it's how Red is doing it. That the floor cuddling is just really kind of off-putting. Even so, if this was Snow Pea, I know she wouldn't be okay with it 100% if she knew. She technically doesn't know. No one has told her, and when she awoke, Samuel and Red were trying to carry her out of the burning building, and the only one that would bring it up was Samuel, who has now lost his memories of her. The DM encouraged me that if I or Snow Pea wasn't okay with something, then one of us, depending on the situation, needed to speak up and let Red know. I told her I was afraid he would leave the game again or get angry at Snow Pea, attempting to kill her like he did Samuel's character when they originally got angry at one another. The DM assured me if he tried to metagame by killing Snow-Pea over something so minor as a rejection or disliking his plans of theft, that she'd step in, and that if I didn't speak up, then Red more than likely would keep trying to force something with my character. That he needed to be told, hey, I don't like that, either in character, out of character, or both. The DM then told me that she had plans for Red, that she was going to drive home the point that his actions will have consequences, even if the day is currently resetting, and if he continues making rash choices like attempting to kill/fight NPCs without valid reasons. However, when it comes to him hitting on my character, so long as he doesn't do anything that's going to require the Law and Order SVU's iconic Jun Jun, then she can't really step in and tell him how he's going to play if I don't tell her in that moment. She can't read my mind and tell what I would be okay with happening and what I wouldn't be. That if Snow-Pea isn't interested in a relationship, that she needs to tell him plainly no, assuring me that if he tries after that or does anything funny, then she can fully step in without abusing her powers as a DM. After all, if he hits on her and the DM steps in and says knock it off, that'll look odd to the other players and seemingly be out of nowhere. If Snow-Pea says no, then it's out there in the open. It's canon that Snow-Pea is not on the market. Any further prying will allow the DM to step in and remind the player that the other player has made it known she doesn't want a relationship, and that further pushing is considered as them trying to assert their will onto another player's OC, which is a huge no-no for our DM. She did say that she'd step in when it came to cuddling an unconscious character to show that Red's actions that seem creepy will be noticed by others, NPCs, and to discourage that type of behavior towards other player characters, since when it comes to doing the mattress mambo, there is a rule of consent in place that we decided among the group at the very beginning. So, as far as that subject goes, I feel more confident moving forward and asserting myself more. I need some time that I can use, or maybe pass to the DM to help in that situation. Red so far has ignored our character's advice when it comes to certain scenes, and then gets angry/surprised when NPCs aren't doing what he wants them to do. Usually they don't instantly back down when he attempts to intimidate them. His interactions only consist of 3 things: trying to make business deals, flirting with women, or threatening/attacking someone when the situation is not in his favor. The first 2 are fine. I think they can add to his character, especially him being the businessman type and always looking to strike a deal. The third, though, is something I honestly just can't stand, because no matter how much you hint or try to nudge him away from that scenario without metagaming, he'll instantly try to kill that NPC or player. NPCs I could forgive, but when it comes to something that affects someone else's players, I don't like it at all. And I'm not sure how to tell him that without seeming like I'm trying to control how he's playing. He and Samuel have a feud, and I think it adds a bit of flavor into the group dynamic, a bit of the rivalry. But he is constantly trying to stir Samuel up, insulting him, and it gets to points when Red will threaten to kill Samuel for calling him a name back or pointing out how his plans failed. I tried talking to Red out of character once yesterday, when we took a small break, mentioning how it's funny when they get to insulting each other's characters back and forth in their banter, and Red mentions how Samuel better watch himself, or he'll have his character burn him into a kitty crisp. I make the remark about how he couldn't actually do that, and Red insists that if his character ever decides he wants to, he could easily, since fur is flammable. I tell him that he shouldn't do it. The day would reset anyways. He shrugs it off and says, "There's no real harm done, right?" I remind him about us losing our memories more, and that this would further fracture Red's relationship with Samuel, possibly prompting Samuel to attempt to kill him to prevent Red from trying that again, resulting in just one huge war between the 2 of them. But Red just says, "Well, if he doesn't want that to happen, then he needs to watch himself." Is there any way I can explain to Red that his character doesn't always have to win, or that he can't always expect situations to go his way without making it seem like I'm trying to control his character's actions? Or maybe any advice I can give to the DM about this? End post. I will say that the OP has 2 updates in their original post that just go over various comments that were left in the thread, which is why I've chosen to exclude it from this video. But if you're interested, be sure to check out the description for that link, to see all the various ideas that people on Reddit had. As for my own suggestions, well, I think a lot of this stems from the fact that the majority of the players at this table are new, and not to mention the DM is also new. So at a more seasoned table, things probably would have played out a little bit differently. I think most DMs would not have been okay with the cuddling of an unconscious player and would have stepped in to stop that. And frankly, unless it is explicitly said in the game description that that kind of stuff is cool, players should come in with the expectation that they just can't randomly do what Red was trying to do with another player, and the DM should definitely assert themselves a bit more to prevent that. Now, going back to the question that the OP ended the post with, what can they do to make Red see that the way he's doing things is a little bit like a murder hobo? Well, I think the best way to do this is to show him examples or give examples where losing is actually more beneficial to the story because cool things happen when you lose. For instance, and I hope she doesn't get mad at me for bringing this up, but a few weeks back, Foxy Bard and I were playing in a Pathfinder game, and she kept trying to trip the various enemies that we were fighting that day, and pretty much getting a natural 1 every single time. And in Pathfinder, that's a critical failure, which meant she fell down and landed on her butt every single time, tripping herself in the process. That, in my opinion, added to a lot of the after-combat banter between her character and my character, as we have sort of a little rivalry going on. So that's just one example from one of my games, but I'm sure many of you have great examples from your games where your failure led to ultimately a much better outcome from a narrative point. Fun things like that can happen as a result of things just not going your way, and I think that the OP needs to be able to provide these examples. Honestly, always getting your way is just super boring, because what do you have to anticipate as a player then? If what you want to happen is what always happens, it's not fun anymore. There's no surprises that are going to happen down the road. So yeah, if they can't provide the examples or Red just doesn't believe them, I think they need to try to force his hand, force a roll or something to go not the way that he wants it to go, and then have sort of a fun outcome with his character to show him that, hey, you didn't get what you wanted, but wouldn't you agree that you're having a lot more fun now that it went this way? Definitely a tricky situation, and do you have a better way of doing this? Definitely leave it in the comments below, and I'll link this back to OP so that they can maybe get some more insight as to what our thoughts on this are. Anyhow, that is it for today's story. As always, the source is in the description below. And if you liked the video and you want to see more videos just like this one, be sure to hit that subscribe button and bell notification icon to be notified of my future videos. Now, while you wait for those future videos, here are a few related videos that you can watch from my channel in the meantime.